Marin pressed the fabric of her dress uniform flat against her stomach in the hotel bathroom mirror, 40 minutes out, and told herself the wrinkle wouldn't matter from 3 rows back. She'd learned over the years to negotiate with distance. If she couldn't be close, she could at least be visible. If she couldn't be acknowledged, she could at least not make a scene about it. That was the arrangement, unspoken but total, that had governed every holiday, every graduation, every quiet family gathering since she was 19, when she'd told her father she was enlisting instead of finishing the business degree he'd already half paid for. He hadn't yelled. That was the thing people didn't understand when she rarely tried to explain it. He'd just gone quiet in a particular way, a way that reorganized a room. Her brother Colin got the seat closest to the stage at every event after that. She got the aisle seats, the back tables, the folding chairs brought in when the good ones ran out. She'd stopped being surprised by it. Surprise required expecting something else. The commissioning was held in the base auditorium, rows of family in their good clothes, the low murmur of 100 private conversations under fluorescent light. Marin found her seat, row H, 3 back from where her mother sat with Colin's fiancé, where her father sat upright, already proud, already rehearsing in his posture the pride he'd show when Colin walked across that stage. Her Aunt Diane found her there, frowning at the gap. "Why on earth are you all the way back here? You're his sister." "It's fine," Marin said, because it was easier than the truth, which had too many years in it to explain in an auditorium. Her father, 2 seats down, caught the question and answered it before she could stop him, in the light voice he used for things he'd decided were funny. "The disappointment just watches. She's not part of this." Diane's face did something complicated. Marin felt the old familiar tightening in her chest. Not surprise, just recognition, like touching a bruise she already knew was there. "Back row's fine, Dad," she said. It wasn't peace. It had never been peace. It was 14 years of learning that correcting him cost more than it returned, that the room would side with his tone over her record every time, because his tone was warm and easy, and hers, when she tried to defend herself, always came out sounding like resentment. So she'd trained herself out of trying. She sat, watched programs get handed out, watched Colin's name printed in bold at the top of the ceremony roster, watched her own name absent from any part of it. As far as her family's telling went, she disappeared into some vague, unspecified job the day she left for basic training and never fully reappeared. The ceremony began. Names were called. Colin stood when his came and her father's chest visibly swelled, and Marin clapped from the back row like everyone else, because that was what you did. She didn't notice the program director until he was already in the aisle beside row E, moving with the unhurried certainty of someone who does this often and takes it seriously. He had a card in his hand, checked it, looked up, checked it again. An usher walked half a step behind him. He didn't stop at Colin's row. He kept walking, past her mother, past her father's straightened shoulders, until he reached row H and stopped in front of Marin. Staff Sergeant Voss? The auditorium's low murmur thinned into something closer to silence. Marin felt her own name, her rank, land in the room like a stone dropped into still water, ripples moving outward toward people who had never once used it. "Yes," she said. He didn't explain himself to the room. He didn't need to. He simply opened a small presentation case and set it into her hands. A set of insignia, gold against navy velvet, the kind awarded for sustained distinguished service. The kind that didn't get handed out because someone asked nicely. He said something formal about base command wanting to recognize continued exemplary service alongside her brother's commissioning, since her deployment schedule had made it impossible to hold a separate ceremony for her own recent recognition. It was procedural, almost bureaucratic in its delivery. That was what made it unmistakable. Nobody performed sincerity like that. It was simply true. Row H turned first, then G, then the ripple moved forward until her father, still upright, still poised for a different kind of pride than the one now arriving, turned in his seat to look at the daughter he'd left 3 rows back. He didn't say anything. Marin watched him not say anything, watched the specific stillness that meant he was recalculating something he'd built for 14 years without ever checking its foundation. She didn't stand. She didn't make a speech. She held the case in both hands, the way you hold something you didn't expect to receive, and said only quietly to the director, "Thank you." He nodded and moved on down the aisle, back to his other work, as if he hadn't just rearranged the entire architecture of a family's afternoon. Afterward, in the lobby, her father found her near the doors. He didn't apologize. She hadn't expected him to, and some small, tired part of her almost respected that he didn't try to perform one on the spot, that he wasn't willing to cheapen it into a photo-worthy moment either. "You never said," he said instead, which was its own kind of confession, though not the kind she'd once wanted. "You never asked," Marin said. He absorbed that the way he absorbed most things that cost him something. Silently, jaw working once. Colin came over a moment later, still glowing from his own ceremony, and hugged her hard, said he hadn't known, said it like an apology on their father's behalf that wasn't really his to give. Her mother touched the edge of the velvet case, not quite Marin's hand, and said it was beautiful. Marin said, "Thank you," again, to no one in particular, and let the case rest against her palm, heavier than it looked. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt mostly tired, in a new way, the particular exhaustion of being seen after deciding long ago that she wouldn't be. Her father didn't move his seat forward for the reception. Neither did she. But when the photographer gathered the family for the group photo, he was the one who said, without looking directly at her, "Get in the front, Marin." She did. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close. But it was the first time in 14 years he'd asked her to be anything other than 3 rows back.